Welcome back to Preparing for the Unexpected. As I promised, this is now part three. We thought we were only going to be talking for 15 minutes at the most there, Steve, but we still got lots to cover.
Definitely. We're not known for being gentlemen that don't have a lot to say, so it's fair enough. And you've picked some really, I mean, some of these topics, Alex, are really deep, so it's fair.
Well, I've got one more I wanted to ask you about,
Hmm.
and then we can talk about a couple of other things. But the last one on this list from the Marsh editorial from early May is cloud native security. I've not heard that expression before.
Sure. Excuse me. So we talked, let me think, the first episode, right? We talked about SaaS, software as a service, posture management. This is inherently very similar, right? Some organizations will say, hey, we're a cloud native organization. It means we don't have legacy data centers, right? We don't have that on-premise infrastructure. So when we talk about cloud native security, what is the threat? We're talking about this in the terms of the threat landscape. It's misconfiguration. It's really all it is. So we talked about SaaS posture management from a perspective of visibility and observability, right? Least privilege, as we talked about before. So cloud native security is really taking an approach, right? Because the vulnerability in your cloud is because of misconfiguration. That's really it. That's it in a nutshell. Right? Because vulnerability management is all about, gaps and holes and missing patches, right? Cloud native security is all around the misconfiguration of your cloud, introducing vulnerabilities. Because all the cloud means is we're just shifting data and infrastructure outside of traditional perimeters like data centers. You managed the data center, you understood it. You could instant firewall, unplug the cable. It's not the case for the cloud, right? Misconfigured storage, weak identity management, usernames and passwords, right? Service accounts and passwords, APIs, etc., and insufficient logging, visibility into that. That's where the risks are. So the misconfiguration around your data storage, the weak identity controls, the insufficient logging of events to understand what's happening, that's the issue. So the fix, right? If we talk about this from a cloud native security, and then how do we fix that vulnerability from misconfiguration? It's again, it goes back to what we say now about posture management, understanding what the gaps are, and that continuous monitoring, not point in time audits. It's not going to help you because the cloud is always on,
Right.
right? So that continuous monitoring gives you the observability, the posture management, and the identity driven controls into your cloud, right? That's the issue. Because in cloud environments, you're not breached because of sophisticated viruses or malware, malicious software. You're breached because you left a door open so the bad guys get in.
Right.
Right? We talk about closing the door. We talk about, identifying a threat. We talk about containing the attack. We talk about eradication. And whenever we talk about eradication of a threat, we talk about closing the door. If you don't close the door, then the holes are still open and the bad guys are walking right through it. It's the same for your cloud, right? In cloud environments, which we are all in now, right? You're breached because you leave something open that the bad guys go, oh, I can poke that hole. That's what it really is. That's it in a nutshell. Goes back to that observability, visibility, and posture management. Looking at the controls that are in place in your cloud.
So why would it be separate then? I don't, I
I
maybe
mean,
there's
I mean,
something
it,
there
it's
I'm not seeing.
separated in Marsh's, report, right? Because they're talking about posture management over here for SaaS-based applications, but they're doing a bit of a separation between your software as a service and your cloud infrastructure. Cloud infrastructure is your containers, your entire cloud footprint, like AWS, Microsoft Azure, right? Away from just Microsoft 365 as a service, your Office apps, etc., your Exchange Online, right? You're now looking at, well, what is the entirety of that cloud? How does that fit
Okay.
together? So they're separating SaaS from cloud. It's inherently the same, right? There are a lot of SaaS professionals and cloud-based professional security companies out there that are going to go, it's not the same, Steve. But I'm trying to keep this, doing what it says on the tin. I'm trying to keep this simple for your audience. It's essentially the same, right?
Okay.
Cloud and SaaS means somebody else's computer. It's somebody else's compute. That's all it is. You don't own it. You don't really manage it. So what it's talking about is getting more of that management and that observability.
Okay.
And that's really it in a nutshell. It kind of leads into some of the pieces that are also mentioned in Marsh's report around zero trust, because we talked about that in the context of three things previously as well, right? Zero trust is not like no trust. It's like not like we don't do it, right? Zero trust isn't a product. It's a shift in how decisions are made, and it's about trusting more based on data and information. So that's really where we get into that SaaS and we get into that cloud security, because it's all about understanding and then tying that together, least privileges, all tied to identities and managing those identities, back to your IT/OT, separation of those environments, also separation of those identities. A user shouldn't be an administrator in one, right?
Yeah.
Separate the roles, decrease the risk.
I'm going to say something that kind of connects a few of these together based on something we said earlier, because we
Yeah, you
talked.
might notice a theme, right? I hope you do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you talked about the fridge and how it's connected, back to other things. It's I I would have this vision of you have your fridge, but you've got all the little bits of food and things to drink inside. There's your SaaS. Your fridge now is your OT, which then connects somewhere through the interweb, whatever, is
Your
your
Wi-Fi,
IT,
yeah, to your IT.
and then
Yep.
your what cloud native security is protecting that whole thing to make sure not everybody has access to your fridge or access to the food or access to the internet. So
Right. And
that was
what is access? Access is driven by identity,
yeah,
right? Assets now carry an identity. Your fridge has an identity on your network. It logs into your Wi-Fi. It has an right. You as a person managing that fridge, firing up the app, connecting it to the Wi-Fi through your Bluetooth, and then connecting it, beyond there, connecting to your washing machine, telling you when your washing load's done, right? You have permissions to do that. It's your identity. All the way down at the bottom of Marsh's list, I'm not sure it should be at the bottom, but I think it may have been put there deliberately, is like number 10, right? Is like identity being that
right,
control plane, because it's not a physical perimeter anymore. It's the cloud. It's a perimeter you don't really have inherent control over. So where is your perimeter now? Your perimeter is your identity. Identity is your new perimeter, your new control plane. Identity is the center of all cybersecurity technologies, right? All of the risk is tied to identities. So, really, what we should be focusing on is gaining visibility across the environment and securing those identities. If identity is compromised, Alex, everything else becomes irrelevant, because
right.
in this modern security realm that we are now, and the attack surface we're looking at, identity is that control plane pulling it kind of all the way back. So if you're for all your listeners across all three of these segments that we've recorded, right, 2026 cybersecurity according to Marsh, right, fair enough, it can be defined by three things. Let's boil it all the way down: complexity, those interconnected systems, and identity driven risk. This is a common thread across all of it, right? Visibility, continuous visibility is what we should be focusing on as cybersecurity professionals and as businesses. Visibility, strong identity controls, and the ability to adapt and respond quickly, right?
Right.
You've got to simplify all this complexity, right? But you can only do that by gaining visibility. You can't pretend to solve every problem, right? Nobody's solving quantum encryption risk right now, right? But you can't solve everything. So just get your arms around it, understand it, and then look at those identity controls and the ability to adapt to something that you didn't know quickly. That's where your listeners can really make a difference.
And that's the perfect spot to end today. Steve, thank you so much. I know it ended up being a much longer conversation than we thought. Originally, 10 to 15 minutes, and we did three segments of 15.
I don't
So,
think we've ever gone 10 to 15 minutes, Alex. I don't think we ever have. So,
you know,
yeah, I think it's always a good conversation, and I'm always happy to share the insights that we have securing businesses out there. It's valuable. I appreciate you giving me the time to chat with you.
well, you're living up to your company's name, Simple Security.
We
Because if
got to
I
keep
can
it
understand
simple.
it, others are going to be able to understand it.
I hope so.
So thank you so much for sharing all your thoughts and your time with me today. I really appreciate it, Steve.
Thanks, Alex.